He slid the divorce papers across her hospital bed while his nurse smiled and his mother clapped. The whole ward watched. "Sign," he said. "You brought nothing." She signed without a word. Nobody knew the $80 billion empire that built the hospital answered to the quiet woman in that bed. The room was too bright that morning, the kind of white light that makes sick people look smaller than they are. Ayanna lay under a thin blue blanket, her hands resting on her stomach. The machine beside her beeped slow and steady. Her face was tired, her eyes were calm. She did not look like a woman who owned anything. That was the point. The door opened and Marcus walked in. He wore a gray suit that cost more than most men made in a season. His shoes shined. His jaw was set hard. He did not look at his wife the way a man looks at a woman he is about to lose. He looked at her the way a man looks at a problem he is finally ready to close. Behind him came two people. The first was a nurse, young, pretty. Her name was Brianna, and she had been on Ayanna's care team for 3 months. She wore her scrubs like a costume now because everyone on that floor already knew. Brianna and Marcus, the husband and the nurse, they thought they were a secret. They were not. The second was Gloria, Marcus's mother, 61 years old, dressed in a cream coat, holding her purse against her chest like a shield. She had never liked Ayanna. She had spent 10 years waiting for this exact day. Ayanna turned her head slowly on the pillow. She looked at all three of them. She said nothing. Marcus pulled a folder from under his arm and dropped it on the rolling tray beside her bed. The papers slid out. Divorce papers, tabs already marking where she should sign. He had come prepared. He had come sure. "I'm not going to make a scene," Marcus said. "I just need this done." Out in the hallway, a family visiting the next room had stopped walking. A nurse at the station looked up. An older man in a wheelchair parked near the window turned to watch. The glass wall of the room left nothing private. Whatever happened here would happen in front of everyone. Gloria stepped closer. 10 years, she said, loud enough to carry. 10 years my son carried you, a girl with nothing, no family worth naming, no money. He gave you a name and a roof, and look at you now. She shook her head slowly. Lying here, costing him everything. Sign the papers, child. Let my son live. Brianna stood near the door with her arms folded. She did not say a word. She only smiled. A small, satisfied smile. The smile of a woman who already feels like she has won. The narrator wants you to see this clearly. 3 people. A husband holding the pen, a mother holding the speech, an outsider holding the smile. 3 betrayals standing in one small room, all aimed at one woman who could barely sit up. And the woman in the bed just looked at them. "You brought nothing into this marriage," Marcus said. His voice cracked just a little, and he hated that it did. "So you'll leave with nothing. That's fair. That's clean. Sign Ayanna." She reached for the pen. The room held its breath. The man in the wheelchair leaned forward. The nurse at the station stopped typing. Ayanna lifted the pen. Her hand did not shake. She signed her name once, slow and clean, the way her grandmother had taught her to sign anything, like the word was worth something. Then she put the pen down. "It's done," she said. 2 words. The first words she had spoken. Marcus blinked. He had expected tears. He had expected begging. He had prepared himself for a fight, and the silence threw him off balance. He grabbed the folder, checked the signature, and nodded fast, like a man rushing out of a building before it falls. "Good," he said. "Good." Gloria sniffed. Brianna's smile grew. They turned to leave, all 3 of them, already talking about the next thing, a wedding, a new life, a future without the dead weight in the bed. Not one of them stopped to ask a single question. Not one of them asked whose name was on the front of the hospital. Not one of them asked who paid for the floor they were standing on. the machine that was keeping Ayana's heart steady, the salary that landed in Brianna's account every 2 weeks. They were so busy burying her that they never noticed the ground was hers. The narrator will tell you the truth now, gently, because the story has to start somewhere kind. To understand the woman in that bed, you have to leave that bright room. You have to go back before the suit and the nurse and the cream coat, back before the empire nobody could see. You have to go back to a small house on a narrow street and to an old woman who saved coins in a chipped enamel cup. Ayana was raised by her grandmother. Folks on the block called her Mama Esther. She was a small woman with strong hands and a soft voice, and she went to church on Sunday and worked 2 jobs the other 6 days. Ayana's mother had passed when the girl was 4. Her father had left before that, so it was just the 2 of them in that little house, the old woman and the quiet child. They did not have much. The narrator will not pretend they did. Some weeks the lights flickered. Some winters the heat ran low and they slept under 3 blankets and laughed about it, so the cold would not feel so heavy. But there was love in that house. Real love, the kind that does not need a receipt. On the kitchen windowsill sat a chipped enamel cup, white with a thin blue rim and a crack running down one side that Mama Esther had glued back together more than once. That cup was where the coins went. Every night the old woman would empty her pockets and drop whatever she had left into it, a few coins, sometimes only 1. "Fill it slow, child," Mama Esther used to say, "drop by drop, and never let them see how much is inside. Folks treat you gentle when they think you've got nothing. Let them think it, then build where they can't watch." Little Ayana would sit at that table and listen. She did not fully understand it then. She understood it later. Mama Esther taught her 3 things, over and over, until they lived in her bones. The first, be kind, even when kindness costs you. The second, keep your worth quiet, because the world will try to take loud things from you. And the third, a person's value is never in what someone gives them. It is in what they build when no one believes they can. Ayana grew up gentle. That was the truth of her. She fed the neighbors' children when their mother worked late. She forgave easy and held grudges hard to keep. She walked old folks home from church. People liked her because she made them feel safe and because she never once made anyone feel small. But under the softness, there was steel. Mama Esther had put it there, drop by drop, like the coins in the cup. When Ayana was 19, Mama Esther got sick. The narrator will not linger here because Ayana never let herself linger here either. The old woman passed in the spring in a hospital across town, in a room that was cold and crowded and not gentle at all. The nurses were tired. The doctors were rushed. Mama Esther died with strangers hurrying past her door, and Ayana sat alone in the hallway and made herself a promise she did not yet know how to keep. She promised that one day, somewhere, sick people would be treated like they mattered, that no grandmother would die in a room where no one slowed down. That promise had no money behind it, just a grieving girl and a chipped cup she carried home in her coat pocket. 19 years old, no mother, no father, and now, no grandmother. She walked home alone in the spring rain and sat at the kitchen table where the old woman used to empty her pockets. She set the cup down and stared at it for hours. She did not cry. Somewhere in that silence, something hardened into a decision. She would not be small. She would not be pitied. She would build something the world could not ignore, even if the world never learned her name. Because promises are a kind of seed. You plant them in the dark and tend them when no one is looking, and one day they come up tall enough to shade a whole city. Ayana worked. She cleaned offices at night and took business classes in the day. She read everything. She watched how money moved, who held it, who hid it, who lost it. She started small. a little cleaning and staffing company that served the hospitals across the city. Then she bought the laundry contract. Then the medical supply company that sold to those same hospitals. One quiet piece bought the next. But here is the part that made her different. From the very first dollar, she learned to hide what she owned, the way her grandmother taught her. She did not put her own name on the companies. She put them under a trust. And she put the trust under a holding company, and she put that holding company under another one, until the woman at the center was almost impossible to find on paper. She hired professional managers to run each piece and stand in the light. Lawyers spoke for her. Executives signed for her. The world saw the companies. The world never saw her. By the time she was 30, the staffing company had become a labor empire. The supply company had become a medical technology firm. She had moved into real estate, buying the very ground the hospitals sat on. Then logistics, the trucks and warehouses that moved medicine across the country. Then investments, then holdings overseas. Each division was large on its own. Stacked together behind all those trusts and shells, they had quietly become one of the largest privately held fortunes in the country. And at the top of all of it, where no document plainly said her name, sat one quiet woman. She met Marcus in her late 20s, right in the middle of building it. He was charming back then, hungry, ambitious, broke, and proud of his dreams. He talked about the empire he was going to build. Ayanna listened, and she smiled, and she did not tell him that she had already started building one of her own, one far larger than anything he imagined. She married him because she loved the man he was trying to be, and because deep down, a part of her still wanted what most people want, to be chosen, to be loved, to be enough for somebody. So she made a quiet choice. She let the world believe Marcus was the provider. She let him have the spotlight, the title, the loud life. She kept her affairs behind her managers and her trusts, the same walls that hid her from everyone else. When her companies were honored at galas and conferences, she sent representatives in her place, a polished executive, a smiling spokeswoman, a lawyer with a firm handshake. The name on the invitation was never hers. For 10 full years, Marcus lived beside the richest person he would ever meet, and never once suspected it, because she had spent her whole life making sure no one could. She thought she was protecting their love by keeping the pressure off it. She did not yet know she was protecting herself. The chipped enamel cup sat on the windowsill of their home all those years. Marcus never asked about it. He thought it was junk. An old woman's old cup. He had no idea it was the whole story. Now come back forward, not all the way to the hospital. Stop a few months short of it, because betrayal does not happen in one day. It is built the same way trust is built. Slow, quiet, drop by drop. Marcus changed before Ayanna got sick. Looking back, she could see it clearly. The late nights, the phone he started turning face down, the cologne that wasn't the kind she bought him. He stopped looking at her across the dinner table. He started looking through her. Then the tiredness came for Ayanna, the shortness of breath, the dizziness when she stood too fast. Then the diagnosis, spoken softly by a doctor in a quiet room. Myocarditis, he called it, an inflammation of the heart muscle, most likely from a virus she never even knew she caught. Serious, yes. Frightening, yes. But treatable. With medication, monitoring, and months of real rest, the doctor said, most patients recover fully and live long, normal lives. It was not a death sentence. It only needed time and care and people around her who wanted her to live. That last part turned out to be the dangerous part, and that was when Brianna entered their life. She came as a private nurse, hired to help Ayanna through the hard stretch. Young, warm on the outside, the kind of warm that costs nothing and means even less. She brought soup, she fluffed pillows. She called Marcus Sir with a little too much music in her voice. The narrator watched it happen. The way you watch a slow leak ruin a ceiling, first a stain, then a crack, then the whole thing coming down. Brianna learned the house. She learned Marcus. She learned which of his wounds to press. She told him he worked too hard for a woman who gave him nothing. She told him he deserved a life that was light, easy, fun. She never said the cruel things straight. She said them sideways, dressed up as concern. And Marcus, weak in the place where his pride lived, drank it all in. Gloria helped. Oh, Gloria helped a great deal. She had never approved of Ayanna, a girl from a little house with a dead grandmother and no family name. Now she had a young, pretty nurse smiling at her son, and a sick daughter-in-law too weak to fight. Gloria saw her chance, and she took it with both hands. She started the whispers, to Marcus, to Marcus's sister, Danielle, to anyone who would lean in. "That girl's been hiding money from you all these years," Gloria whispered. "Why else does she watch every account so close? She's draining you, mark my words. She's faking half this sickness to keep you trapped." It was a lie so perfectly upside down that it would have been funny if it weren't so cruel. Danielle picked up the lie and carried it. She told Marcus that Ayanna had always looked down on the family, that she thought she was better, that a real wife would have given him children, given him peace, given him more. Lies stacked on lies until the woman they described was not Ayanna at all. It was a stranger they had built to hate, and Marcus believed it. That is the part that broke something in Ayanna, not Brianna, not Gloria. Brianna was a stranger, and Gloria was always going to be Gloria. But Marcus, her husband, the man she had loved in his broke and hungry days, he believed the stranger they built. He chose to believe it, because believing it made the affair feel like justice instead of betrayal. Ayanna saw it all from her bed. She was sick, not blind. There was one night she would never forget. The narrator will tell it to you the way it happened, slow so you feel it the way she felt it. It was late. The house was dark. Ayanna had woken with a dry throat and gone to the top of the stairs for water, moving soft the way sick people learn to move. And she heard them, down in the kitchen, Marcus and Brianna, talking low, thinking the whole world was asleep. She stopped at the top of the stairs and she listened, with her hand on the wall to keep herself standing. She heard the young nurse laugh. She heard her say that the hard part was almost over. She heard her ask Marcus when he was going to finally be free. And she heard her husband, the man she had loved when he was broke and hungry, the man she had stayed in the shadow to protect. She heard him answer in a low, easy voice. He told Brianna that the moment the divorce was final, he would marry her. He said it plain. A wedding. A ring, a new wife in the house his old one was dying in. He told her his wife was fading anyway, that it would not be long now, and that once it was done, the two of them could finally start the life they deserved. Ayanna stood there in the dark and felt her own heart break in real time. Not loud. Hearts do not break loud. They break like a thread, pulling apart, one fiber at a time, until the whole thing just gives. She did not go down those stairs. She did not scream. She did not throw a thing. She turned around, walked back to her room on legs that barely held her, and lay down in the dark with her eyes open until morning. Something in her went quiet that night. Numb. The kind of numb that looks like surrender, but is really the calm before a person decides exactly who they are going to be. By morning, she had stopped crying for good. The girl who forgave easy had finally found a wall she would not climb over. One afternoon, when the house was empty, she did something she had not done in a long while. She opened a locked drawer in her office and pulled out a single leather folder. Inside were papers no one else in that house had ever seen. Names of companies. Names that owned other companies, a web of quiet ownership that stretched far past anything Marcus could imagine. She read it slowly, and the truth of it landed on her chest like a weight. The little service company she had started in her 20s had grown. Then it had bought others. Then those had grown too. Real estate, medical technology, logistics, investments, holdings in 3 other countries, each one a giant in its own right, all of them folded under her trusts like cards in a closed hand. And the hospital network, the very buildings Marcus thought made him important, was only one division of the whole. One floor of a tower so tall most people could not see the top. Quietly, patiently, drop by drop, the small savings she had once counted by hand in a cold apartment had become a fortune almost too large to say out loud. Large enough to buy the very hospital she would one day lie inside, and buy it twice over without noticing the cost. She had built an empire and told no one. She had kept her worth quiet, the way Mama Esther taught her. And now her husband, her mother-in-law, and a stranger in scrubs were standing over her, calling her penniless, trying to take it all from her for free, and they did not even know there was anything to take. Ayanna closed the folder. She did not cry. That was the strange part. She had cried plenty in those months, but not now. Now she felt something colder and quieter settle into her. Not rage. Rage is loud. This was the opposite of loud. For a moment, she let herself go numb. She let them win in her mind, just to feel how it felt. She imagined signing the papers, walking away, letting them have their wedding and their lies. She felt how easy it would be to disappear and let kindness be the end of her story. Then she looked across the room at the windowsill. The chipped enamel cup sat there in the afternoon light, white with the thin blue rim and the old crack down the side. Her grandmother's voice came up out of the years, soft and clear. Be kind, even when it costs you, but never let them rob you in your own house. Ayanna picked up her phone. She made one call. The man on the other end had worked for her for years and had never once spoken her name in public. She did not give a speech. She did not raise her voice. She said one word, "Begin." Then she put the phone down, lay back against the pillow, and let them keep believing she was nothing. A few weeks later, she was in the hospital. Her condition had worsened just enough to land her in a bed for observation. The same wing, the same gleaming floors, the same hospital that, unknown to every soul walking those halls, belonged to her. And that is where Marcus chose to do it. That is where he brought the papers, and his mother, and his smiling nurse, and ended their marriage in front of strangers. The way the story began. You already saw that part. The bright room, the clapping, the 2 words. It's done. What you did not see is what came next. Because 3 days after Ayanna signed those papers, the hospital sent out invitations to a long-planned event. A grand evening in the main hall. A donor gala and board ceremony held to honor the people who kept the whole network alive. Doctors would come, board members, the city's important faces, and as it happened, the senior staff and their guests. Marcus was invited as a respected man married into the right circles, though he was no longer married to anyone. He came anyway. He came with Brianna on his arm, in a borrowed glow of importance, ready to be seen as a man entering a bright new life. Gloria came in a gown she had bought for the occasion, proud as a peacock. Danielle came too, ready to enjoy the night. They walked into that great hall like people who had finally arrived. The room was beautiful. High ceilings, soft gold light, round tables dressed in white. At the front, a small stage with a podium, and behind it, the hospital's name spelled out in tall letters. Everyone mingled. Everyone smiled. Brianna held a glass and laughed too loud, at things that weren't funny. Marcus shook hands and let people assume the best about him. Gloria told 3 different women that her son was moving on to something wonderful. The board chairman, an older gentleman named Mr. Coleman, stepped to the podium and tapped the microphone. The room quieted. He thanked the doctors. He thanked the staff. He talked about the mission of the hospital, to treat every patient like they mattered, especially the ones the world forgot. Marcus only half listened. He was thinking about his new life. Then Mr. Coleman's voice changed. It dropped into something warmer, something close to reverence. For 10 years, he said, I have run the day-to-day of this network on behalf of its owner. In all that time, I have only ever met her through her lawyers and her representatives. At every gala, every ribbon cutting, every board meeting, she sent someone in her place. She asked to remain unseen, and we honored it. She is not only the founder of this hospital network, she is the chair of the parent company that owns it, along with our real estate, our technology, our logistics, and a great deal more than I am permitted to name in this room. He paused, and his voice softened. Tonight, for the first time in all these years, she has chosen to come herself. It is the honor of my life to welcome her. A murmur moved through the hall. People looked at each other. The owner? Most of them had never known there was a single owner at all. They had assumed the network belonged to a board, a fund, some faceless company. They had no idea it traced back to one person, and that the person had been a name on a trust the whole time, hidden on purpose. The great doors at the back of the hall opened, and Ayanna walked in. The narrator wants you to take a breath here, because this is the moment. She was not the frail woman from the bed, not tonight. She walked on her own, steady and slow, in a long, deep green gown that caught the gold light. Her head was up. Her hands were still. She had color in her face and steel in her spine. She did not rush. She did not need to. The whole room turned toward her, and she let them. Marcus's glass stopped halfway to his mouth. Brianna's laugh died in her throat. Gloria's proud smile froze and cracked like ice on a pond when the weather turns. Ayanna walked down the center of the hall, past the round white tables, past the people who had no idea who she was 3 minutes ago and would never forget her again. She walked toward the stage. Mr. Coleman stepped back from the podium and lowered his head respectfully as she passed. She climbed the 2 small steps. She turned to face the room, and she found, in the crowd, the 3 faces she had come for. She did not point. She did not raise her voice. When she spoke, the microphone barely needed to carry it, because the room had gone so silent you could hear the gold light hum. "Good evening," Ayanna said. "Most of you don't know me. That was always on purpose. My grandmother taught me to build where no one is watching. So I did." She let that sit. "This hospital is one small part of what I built," she said. "The network it belongs to, the company above that network, the real estate under your feet, the trucks that bring your medicine, the technology in your machines, and holdings in places most of you will never visit. They all answer to me. They always have. Every floor of this building, every machine in it, every paycheck that lands in every account on the staff list." Her eyes moved, just slightly, toward Brianna. Every single one. Brianna's face went the color of ash. The glass trembled in her hand. A ripple of shock crossed the room. Doctors looked at each other. Board members nodded slowly, the way people nod when a quiet truth they half suspected finally stands up straight. Marcus could not move. He stood frozen between a table and a lie. The woman he had called penniless, standing above the entire room like she had been carved for that exact spot. 3 days ago, Ayanna went on, calm as still water, a man came to my hospital bed. He brought his mother, who clapped, and he brought his nurse, who smiled. In front of a whole ward, he slid divorce papers across my bed and told me I brought nothing into our marriage, that I would leave with nothing. She tilted her head slightly. He was so sure of it, so I signed. I didn't argue. There was nothing to argue about. She looked straight at Marcus then, not with hate, with something worse than hate, with pity. He was right about one thing, she said. I will leave with nothing of his, because I never needed anything of his. Not the name, not the roof, not the suit he's so proud of. The truth, Marcus, is that you spent 10 years living inside something I built, and you were so busy looking down on me that you never once looked around. The narrator wishes you could have seen Gloria's face. The cream coat, the proud purse, the speech she had given at the bedside, all of it turning to dust in real time. She opened her mouth. No words came. For the first time in her 61 years, Gloria had nothing to say. Danielle slowly set down her drink and stared at the floor. And Brianna, the smiling nurse, the woman who had whispered Marcus toward this ruin, Brianna understood first what the others were still catching up to. She understood that the man she had chosen was nothing without the wife he threw away. That the bright, new life she had been promised had just been switched off at the wall. She let go of Marcus's arm. She did it without thinking. The way you let go of something hot. A small step sideways. A few inches of distance. But everyone saw it. In a room that quiet, you could not miss it. The outsider was already leaving, and the man had not even fallen all the way yet. Ayanna saw it too. She had known it would happen. People who come for the money always leave with it. The narrator wants you to feel how quiet that hall had become. A room full of important people, and not one of them moved. A waiter stood frozen with a tray. Mr. Coleman watched from the side of the stage with his hands folded, like a man at church. Somewhere in the back, a single chair scraped the floor and the sound carried like thunder. Every face in that room was turned toward the woman in the deep green gown, and every face was learning the same lesson at the same time, that they had walked past her 100 times and never once seen her. That the smallest person in the building had been the one holding it up, the doctors who had rushed past her bed, the board members who'd cashed their honor at her table. The whole shining room had been built on the back of a woman they let a man humiliate 3 days ago. And now there was nowhere to look but at her, and nothing to do but understand. She reached into a small clutch at her side and drew out a folded paper. The signed divorce agreement. She held it up for a moment, then walked down off the stage, crossed the silent floor, and stopped in front of Marcus. She placed the folded papers gently against his chest, the way you return something that was never really yours to hold. You were right, she said softly, just for him, though the whole room leaned in to hear. I'll keep nothing of yours. Then she stepped back, turned, and let the truth finish doing its work. The narrator has seen a lot of reversals, loud ones, angry ones, people throwing drinks and screaming across rooms. This was not that. This was quieter and far more deadly. Ayanna never raised her hand or her voice. She simply stopped hiding, and the moment she stopped hiding, the whole world the betrayers had built collapsed under its own weight. Marcus looked down at the papers against his chest. He finally understood what he had signed. The fall came fast, the way these things do once they start. The narrator will not dress it up. He will just tell you what happened, because the truth was punishment enough. Marcus had built his entire standing on being connected to the right things. His position, his contracts, the rooms he was allowed into, all of it had quietly leaned on the network Ayanna owned. He had thought he was a powerful man. The truth was that he had been standing on her floor the whole time, and now she simply stopped holding it up. Within weeks, his title was gone. His name was removed from the board he had been so proud to sit on. The deals that had felt so solid turned to smoke. He went to make calls, and the calls were not returned. Doors that used to open before he knocked stayed shut. He learned the hard way that respect borrowed against another person's empire is not respect at all. It is rent, and the lease was up. Brianna was gone before the worst of it even landed. She had chased a man who looked like a fortune. The moment the fortune turned out to belong to his wife, the man stopped being interesting. She did not even bother with a dramatic goodbye. She simply stopped answering. One day, Marcus called her and the line just rang. Then her number stopped working at all. He had thrown away 10 years for a woman who could not be bothered to give him 10 more minutes. Once the well ran dry. But Ayanna made sure the rest of it was not so simple for Brianna, not out of cruelty, out of fairness, and out of a duty to every other sick woman who might one day trust a nurse in her home. A nurse takes an oath. She is not supposed to start a romance with the husband of the patient she has been hired to protect. She is not supposed to whisper a sick woman toward an early grave so she can take her place. There are boards that exist for exactly this, boards that license nurses and can take that license away. The complaint that reached the state nursing board was quiet, professional, and supported by records, dates, messages, the hospital's own files. There was a hearing. Brianna had no real answer for any of it. When it was over, the board found that she had violated the most basic ethics of her profession, and they revoked her license to practice. The smiling nurse would never wear those scrubs again. The one thing she had used as a key into other people's homes was taken from her for good. She had traded a whole career for a man who stopped returning her calls the week the money disappeared. The narrator will tell you about his nights, because that is where a man meets the truth about himself. Marcus could not sleep. He would lie awake in a rented room, smaller now, plainer now, and he would replay that hospital morning over and over, the bright light, his mother clapping, Brianna smiling by the door, his own voice saying those 4 words, "You brought nothing, sign." He had said them like a man who was sure. He had said them in front of a whole ward, and every time he replayed it, he saw something he had been too proud to see in the moment. The way his wife had looked at him when she lifted that pen, not with hate, not even with fear. She had looked at him with a quiet that he finally understood was goodbye. She had already let him go. He had just been too busy winning to notice he had lost everything that mattered. He would press his hands over his face in that small, dark room and feel the shame rise up like water, and there was no one left to call, and nothing left to blame but the man in the mirror. Gloria's fall was the slowest and, the narrator suspects, the most painful for her. She had spent her whole life performing for a certain circle of women, church friends, neighbors, the ladies whose opinions she lived and died by. They had all been at that gala or heard about it within the hour. They had all watched her clap a poor girl out of a marriage, only to learn the poor girl owned half the city. Gloria became a story those women told, a warning, the proud mother who bet on the wrong child. She stopped going to the places she used to rule. She could not stand the silence that followed her into a room. Danielle, to her small credit, was the only one who tried to apologize. She wrote Ayanna a long message, full of sorrow and shame. Ayanna read it once. She did not answer it with anger. She did not answer it at all. Some bridges, once you watch a person help burn them down, you simply do not rebuild. You just stop looking at the ashes. As for Marcus, the narrator will give you his last picture of the man. He came to see Ayanna one final time. He found her not in a courtroom or an office. but standing outside the hospital near the front doors, beneath the tall letters of its name, workers were raising a new sign over a quiet new wing, a wing with soft light and unrushed nurses, built for the patients the world forgets. The sign read, in plain letters, the Esther Wing. He did not know the name. He had lived 10 years beside the woman who carried it, and never once asked whose it was. He stood at a distance and watched her for a while before he found the courage to come close. "I didn't know," he said. His voice was small now. The suit was the same. The man inside it had shrunk. "All those years, I didn't know who you were." Ayanna looked at him. "And the narrator wants you to understand." There was no triumph in her face. There was only a kind of tired peace. "That was the problem, Marcus," she said gently. "You never wanted to know who I was. You only wanted to know what I could give you, and the day you decided I had nothing left to give, you threw me away in front of a room full of strangers." She paused. "A man who loves you stays when he thinks you have nothing. That's the whole test. You failed it the moment you walked in with those papers." He had no answer. There was no answer. She did not yell at him. She did not have him removed. She simply turned and walked back toward the doors of the hospital she owned, toward the work that actually mattered, and left him standing on the sidewalk with the cold understanding of everything he had done. The narrator watched him stand there a long time. Then he walked away, a smaller man than he had ever believed he could become, carrying the heaviest thing a person can carry, the knowledge that the treasure had been in his house the whole time, and he had been the one to throw it out. Ayanna did not look back at him. Looking back was never her way. Mama Esther had not raised her to stare at ashes. She had raised her to build. A season passed. The narrator likes to end where stories begin, so come back now to the little house on the narrow street. Ayanna had kept it all these years. She never sold it. Through all the empire and the quiet wealth and the buildings with her grandmother's values stamped invisibly into their walls, she had kept the small house with the cracked steps and the kitchen where it all started. She sat there one evening, in the quiet, with a cup of tea cooling in her hands. On the windowsill, in the last gold light of the day, sat the chipped enamel cup, white with the thin blue rim and the old crack down the side that had been glued back together more times than anyone could count. It did not hold coins anymore. Ayanna had no need to fill it drop by drop these days, but she kept it there, in the light, because it held something the money never could. It held Mama Esther. It held the lesson. It held the whole truth of who Ayanna had decided to be. She was healed now, with rest and time and her heart finally given room to mend. The doctors had been right. She recovered fully, the way most do. Her strength came back slowly, the way her grandmother always said, "Good things come, slow and quiet and worth the wait." And then she did the thing she had promised in that cold hallway when she was 19. She built it where everyone could see, for once. At the heart of her hospital, she opened the Esther Wing, named for a small woman with strong hands who once died in a hurried room while strangers walked past her door. It was a place built for the patients the world forgets. Soft light, unrushed nurses, long visiting hours, a rule written into its very charter that no one in that wing would ever die alone. Near the entrance, behind a pane of glass, she placed a single object on a small stand, a chipped enamel cup, white with a thin blue rim and an old crack down the side. Most visitors walked past it without knowing what it was. Ayanna knew. It was the whole story. Then she went further. She started the Esther Foundation, funded out of the empire most people still did not know she owned, to carry her grandmother's lessons past the walls of one building. The foundation paid the medical bills of families who had run out of road. It put nurses through school, full scholarships, on one condition: that they swore to treat the poorest patient in the room exactly like the richest. The woman whose own nurse had betrayed her oath spent a fortune raising up nurses who would honor theirs. There was a justice in that the narrator could not improve on if he tried. She helped people the way she had been helped, mostly without a spotlight, letting others stand in the light while she held up the building behind them. The narrator sat with her in that quiet kitchen in his mind's eye, and he thought about everything she had survived. The bright room, the clapping mother, the smiling nurse, the husband who called her nothing and meant it. He thought about how easy it would have been for her to become hard, to let the betrayal turn her into a bitter woman who trusted no one and loved nothing. But she had not. That was her real power, not the empire, not the buildings. The empire was just numbers. Her real power was that she walked through the worst kind of betrayal, by a husband, by family, by a stranger she had let into her home. And she came out the other side still gentle, still kind, still the girl who fed the neighbors' children and walked old folks home from church. They had tried to teach her that she was worthless. Instead, she had taught them what worth actually is, because here is the truth the whole story was built to give you, and the narrator will say it plain. Never measure a person by what they show you. Quiet people often carry the loudest strength. The ones who do not announce themselves, who do not flash what they have, who let you underestimate them, those are very often the ones holding up the whole building you are standing in. And never, ever believe that your worth is in what someone gives you. Your worth is in what you build when no one believes you can. A husband did not make Ayanna, a name did not make her, money did not make her. A small woman with strong hands and a chipped cup made her drop by drop, and then she did the rest herself in the dark, where no one clapped. So if you are out there tonight, and somebody has looked at you and decided you are nothing, let them think it, then go build where they cannot watch. Ayanna set down her tea. She looked at the cup on the windowsill one more time, and the narrator swears he saw her smile, small and quiet and at peace. The light went soft, the house went still, and the woman they threw away sat in the home that love built, the owner of more than they could imagine, holding the only treasure that ever truly mattered. If this story moved you, remember, your silence is not your weakness, and your worth is not for others to decide. Subscribe for more stories like this. Share it with someone who needs to hear it tonight. And tell me in the comments, should she have ever forgiven them? The narrator wants to know what you think. I'll see you in the next one.